good evening, and thank you for being here today on Art Radio. So today we are going to talk about a small slice of history, practically 70 years of history in a way. So we are going to talk about Ebrahim Alkazi, who was born on 18th October 1925 and died in 2020. And he was an Indian theatre director and drama teacher who was the director of the National School of Drama in New Delhi from 1962 to 1977. But he was also a noted art connoisseur, collector and gallery owner, and founded the Art Heritage Gallery at Triveni Kala Sangam in New Delhi in 1977 with his wife Roshan Alkazi. Now, the multifaceted Ebrahim Alkazi was both unusual in many ways and a product of his times. So he was an Arab immigrant who chose to remain in India when his entire family left during partition because he had heard Mahatma Gandhi speak. And Art Heritage itself is over 5 decades and 650 exhibitions old, and it has a dual mandate of commerce and education. So now, in this year, to mark the centenary of Ebrahim Alkazi's birth, Art Heritage presents an exhibition called A Rising Tide, Women Artists from the Alkazi Collection. And it's curated by Adajania. And what it does is it showcases the works of 42 pathbreaking women artists. And to walk us through the show is Amal Allana, the director of Art Heritage, the ex-NST director, and Roshan and Ibrahim's daughter. As you see, this is a show which is up to celebrate the 100 years of Ebrahim Alkazi. Ebrahim Alkazi was somebody who looked at Indian art in a huge way. He's one of the first pioneers of theatre as well. And Amal is his daughter. And she's the one who looks after the collection. Amal, thanks so much for doing this.
No problem. I'm thrilled myself. Yes.
And why did you decide to do the show? Tell me more about the show.
Well, I decided to do the show because I was looking for a good theme to celebrate 100 years, and after much thought, we decided that why not go and project some of his collection, which we have not done so far. And then this came about, and then we decided to work on the women part of the collection, because somehow I had always felt that this is a very interesting lot of work which has been assembled here. And of course, my father's plays had given me an idea, because he had done so many plays to do with women and with themes to do with women in his lifetime. And I really wanted to see how that now had moved into the visual arts. So in my own little book on the biography, I have a chapter which is called Alkazi's Women, tantalizingly, but it's about all the women characters and protagonists of his plays. So this transition from women who are staged to actually artists who are expressing Indian artists. And don't forget, a lot of the plays were foreign plays, were plays of Ibsen, Chekhov, Strindberg, which dealt with women. And but now there was a burst, it's a seeming burst from the 60s onwards of women writers, of women visual artists. And so this was very exciting to me. And I thought, why not let's talk about the beginnings of the women's movement per se.
So this is something you and I discussed, which is that from, say, the passing away of Anita Shergill till the 60s, we don't have a lot of proof of women artists in India.
Yes.
But here suddenly we've got Ebrahim Alkazi coming up with a collection of over 200 women artists.
Yes.
Where did he find them?
So that's when we started doing our documentation, which we ourselves didn't know. We started finding there's a plethora, and now we've put together a timeline which shows us that 203 women artists were showcased through Art Heritage over this period of 40, 50 years, 45 years. So it was, but this came to us much later. But as we were going along, of course, don't forget, as a young person, I was growing up with the works of all these artists. I knew these artists, so whether it was Rekha or Nalini or Arpita. I was a teenager at that time in the 70s in Delhi, and of course, I came to all the Art Heritage, the shows, and I knew them. And so I knew their work, but I had never looked at their work. But then, as I became also known as a woman theatre director, and then there was a focus, a sort of a focus being created in my mind too. I was very keen to know how these women had actually approached their work, what was the idiom that they were using, because we as women directors in theatre were using entirely new means to what our predecessors, the young men, had done before us. So we found it rather interesting. Not only were our thematics very different, but also, the way of expressing, the kind of performance language which we were evolving on the stage. I'm talking about a group of 5, 6, 7 women directors in Delhi especially, who in a way have always been grouped together in writing, etc., etc. So I was very keen to know myself. So it was also something very personal to me to know what exactly was happening in the visual department.
So we can't look at all 42 artists.
No,
Which ones are you most interested?
I think it's very important. So over here, the first part, of course, is Nancy has given us a very nice curatorial note where she is talking about the move from theatre, and therefore she has Miss Julie and Trojan women photographs and of them and of the posters of them of these plays. So that's very interesting. She begins with a bang with a nude, a pink nude of Rekha Rudvitya, which is 80s work. And of course, it is rather, I would say, controversial in its own limited way of presenting the human figure and the human body in its fleshiness, in its pinkness. It is not the kind of nude one would expect, with curvaceous lines and perfect proportions. And I mean, she is presenting to you in the palm of her hand a vulva. So that is quite stunning. But she presents herself in the city. So what you see is the young woman in the city. There are, the factories in the background. There's another version of herself, perhaps behind her. And then she has very phallic symbols like the bananas on the table, etc. This is called Evil City. And this has a lot of text written in it here and there. So one has to read the text to know little incidents or references which she is making to her contemporary times. But again, it's this whole sense. You have all the factories, etc. Then there's a collage, very interesting. So this was a new kind of work that you were sticking pictures on, documentary pictures on. So you have photographs being stuck on here and there, and then also enmeshed into the painting. Here we have Nalini Malani, who is a woman in a pink room. And this will be definitely considered a landmark work, because over here, again, the woman, not in all her so-called accepted kind of curvaceous beauty, but quite as an older woman with sagging breasts, is presented in quite a harsh way. But at the same time, this woman is the other version of this. The first version of this is that her elbows are sort of touching the corners of the canvas as if she's too big for the room. But here it seems that she is now more at home in this room. But the interesting part is, as opposed to Rekha, we find that in Nalini's work, they are in interiors. They are within the home. So she's talking about relationships within the home, which this picture, recollections, one again, she goes to memory, she calls it recollections, is about the women in her family who are their relationship to one another. So she's exploring not necessarily a man-woman relationship, but she's exploring the relationship between women. And she's harsh in her response, because she's not saying women all love each other and this is a fraternity of women, sisterhood. Rather than that, she's saying that there is a tension, and that could be her herself, or this child could be here, that she's surrounded by members, and it only looks there's one man, and he also is not got, his features are not well defined, so he's a blur in the family, so to speak, within the picture frame. But of course, this is just my reading, so it is not the. Over here, we have another of grandmother, and this is a very interesting painting because it has this monolithic matriarch. She's the head of the family, and she has all her Gujarati, textiles around her and her pacheris, and however she's dressed. But again, she's quite a sinister figure because her arms and hands are like claws. So she's got quite, she's not a sweet old nani, but she could be somebody who is quite stunningly, in charge, and if required, have the power to control others as well. So these are new versions of how women see each other. Artists are seeing each other. They're trying to be bold, they're trying to be frank, they're trying to be unpretentious about themselves, and not just prettifying themselves. Over here, Nalini has a brilliant suite, a book which Mr. Alkazi bought from her. These are, it's done in a series, as she says over here. There are 30, it's in a limited series of 30. Now, this is called the Dega suite, of about 38 works in each book. These are just facsimile prints of them for display. And so over here we have women in relationship to other women. So there's a lot of, the whole thing is full of like Degas with his man's eyes was looking at women, ballerinas, dressing, undressing. So that was a male gaze. Here she has a female gaze. So she's talking to Degas in a way that this is what women are all about. And there are a lot of sexual relations between women in this whole suite. It's called the Degas suite. So there are new areas which were never before being talked about. I mean, I'm from theatre, and I can tell you, for anybody to talk about lesbian love in a play is very difficult. It's not happened. It's happened very rarely. Now we're talking about gays and male, but it was not very easy. Here she just relates that these are the kind of conversations that Nancy has set up between saying Alkazi did a play like Lorca's House of Banada Alba with Zora Segal in the lead, and that version of Nani or Mother and this version of Mother placed side by side to be in conversation with one another. But Alkazi's kind of representation of the woman, or what appealed to him, because she was also, Banada was also a very, very forceful matriarch who dominated her 5 daughters. Of course, this beautiful photograph of Arpita and Nalini, of Nilima, is at Kunika Kemud Art Gallery, which was a gallery that was started by my mother. The Kemuls invited Roshan Alkazi to head that gallery in '69, and this was Arpita's first show in Kunika Kemul. And you can see how young they are and perky they are. And but these works are not that show. Those were figurative works. You can see a little bit at the background, the chairs, etc. But here we have from the Alkazi collection displayed works which are totally abstract. Now these are very rare works because Arpita never went back to this phase. This is the first show she had at Art Heritage in '78, I think. So these are the works from that show. Over here, she's really working with texture, and she was also involved with textiles. So obviously, she is being inspired by, threads and weaves and textures being created. And as she says, during this phase, I was just making patterns. I was just decorating and finding out how a line. So I just started with dots and joined the dots with little lines to one another. So, this kind of weaving or this kind of tapestry which she's creating later on moves into an entirely new direction. And over here you can see very delicate and, forceful. So these have been much appreciated by art historians who've been visiting the shows because they've never had a chance to see them. Also, this exhibition lends itself, as somebody told me yesterday, to the fact that now that these have been brought out, for people to see, now once again artists can be revisited and also relocated in art history. Their positions, many a time, they have been left out of the narrative, and only a few of them have been inspired and have grown to heights. But there are a lot of them who were very talented, and now we get a chance to see their work again. Of course, Arpana Caur is still very, very much on the art scene. This is her 1984 response to the riots. And you see the woman who is not a Devi, but who is a many-armed woman who is being plunged into, it's called Visarjan, plunged into the water, and this by men. And at the background over there, you see another woman, sort of practically unable, just weeping, and unable to stop this process. So Arpana writes in these texts, and some of the texts are from her mother's experiences of the 84 riots and about the situation of women. Entire series of 84 was done at Art Heritage by Mr. Alkazi, this exhibition. Like this work was in the exhibition, this he purchased, but he didn't purchase this, neither did he purchase that. But so we have just taken that beautiful work, which is the decapitation of a man during the riots by Arpana Caur. So there are always people who are very anguished, but there are other people who are in the background who seem to be in a state of amnesia, not able to do something, helpless. So, I mean, these are very powerful works and they become very contextual and representative of that period. Now, over here, we have Ira Roy and Jaya Ganguly. And Ira Roy and Jaya Ganguly bring out that aspect, I think, of women, which is very, very pained, anguished, in despair, and there is practically that anger gets converted or transformed, very ghoulish and disturbed figures. So to project a woman like this, torn apart, her limbs all separated, etc., is a very disturbing image. And of course, Ira Roy, in her own way, brilliant draftsman, absolutely. The woman, this vulture over the woman waiting to attack her. This one is called suicide, and she's on the verge of suicide. And that one is called abortion. These are topics which came up in the 70s and 80s. There was women being maltreated, but we started talking about it, about the kind of abortions that were. So suddenly projecting women like this is again a very brave act to really depict women in this kind of agony which they are depicted. Now, Mr. Alkazi was one of the few people who responded to this art in the sense that he collected it. All of them have said, "Koi hamara kaam nahi leta tha," only Mr. Alkazi. He only used to buy this work because he was talking about the human condition. What was the situation? And so people, it was never pretty works. The works were never pretty, they were all very mighty disturbing. So, and when we put them together, this also became a challenge for us, how to lay out this exhibition and present it without it becoming overwhelming, because even people who have come to the exhibition, like yesterday, two people had come from New York, and this, after they saw this, he said, "Can we take a break? It's really," and they knew many of these works or knew these artists, but suddenly to see them together was quite, harsh. I have done the scenography of this exhibition. I have done the layout and the design of this exhibition, as I do in a lot of art heritage shows, because it's my privilege and pleasure to do that, because it substitutes for my not doing theatre nowadays. So the way I have thought of this exhibition is that I have designed it in such a way that you come into an open space, and then you are funneled into these two corridors where you get a much more intimate look. You're very close to the works, which suddenly give you that kind of intimacy. Some mild way of looking at it, but it draws you in. And to a certain extent, I have then used the red carpet. My father used the red carpet in a lot of his exhibitions here, right down here, it would go down here, etc. So that was in remembrance of him. And this little stage, as you can see, this is more like a stage. And these works are so powerful that I felt they should be presented rather than, we don't need to really go so close to these because these come out to you in any case. But what is good is they're black and white, and it's not color also screaming at you. So also to have a mix of khaki walls and a white center row, which is not straight, not a straight line, but gives you some angles to suddenly come upon work so that you don't just see the work. So when you walk in, you never see the whole show. So then everything comes as a bit of a surprise. Okay, we're coming here. So as we walked down here, then opened up this space a little bit. So this is bigger, and you have more breadth, and you have a little bit of space to move around. And then again, you go into a more narrow.
And what are you funneling us to this time?
So over here we have, of course, Gogi, with this absolutely wonderful work from which the title of this exhibition derives itself, A Rising Tide. Mr. Alkazi has a beautiful quote on this painting. He wrote about many of these works. So all these works which were written about in the catalogues of art heritage by him and by other youngsters who he was also women, were also he was encouraging women to become art historians, to go in for. So Rubina was one of the early writers. Gayatri Sinha was in her in her youth over here, writing for art heritage. All of them, they have all been. So we have put all these writings of them writing, Anita Dube, Archana Shastri, Archana Hebbar, all these people who are now very top curators, left, right, and Parul herself, Parul Dave, all encouraged by Alkazi. So when we look at who he was encouraging in terms of women, it was not just go ahead and paint and I will give you a show, but it was also people whom he wanted scholarship to be developed in art. So they would write their articles and bring it to him, and he'd put big red lines through it. And he was a proper teacher, and he would help them to write about. He was very good at writing about art himself. He was very good, and he was very good at talking about art, and giving a full-blooded response to work, explaining work. He did that a lot. So anyway, in Gogi's beautiful work of these women adding on in a processional form to the woman in the cream sari, it's a very gentle kind, not women in protest mode, but women moving together in a more gentle way. You know, it's not slogan mongering and shouting and etc. Because Gogi was not like that. Though Gogi was an activist herself. She was an activist. Here you see the city woman with all her absolutely different to that is she makes a dig at it's called Godrej hair dye. I love the title. The girl is dyeing her head and got her red nails and all that. And here is a beautiful series. This is a portfolio of about 10 works, which is in the collection. And this is Gogi. This is called Letters to Punnu. Her son was Punnu, and she's writing to him in Hindi that, listen, Punnu, I am a Gari. I am working. Devraj is here, and so is here, and we're all working, and this is that. She's trying to introduce her son to art and to the life of artists while he was in boarding school. Much later, of course, it was very unfortunate that that same child passed away. She was very, very disturbed by that because I think she had only one child. So over here again, so you're now getting the sense of the cities. You're getting the pavements in Ketki's work, you know, the poverty. But within that, she's got these three reflective women very beautifully, very gently, pondering on themselves or their own existence, living in, you know, slums. This is all in Bombay. Very poetic. We have the flute player here, lounging with this sleeping child. Very beautiful composition. So Ketki was an artist that Mr. Alkazi even showed in America when he started a gallery there called Sepia for photography. So she Bombay Mix, the book you will see there, is what he brought out on Ketki.
So, where are you on this whole debate on photography as record keeping versus art?
Yeah, that was him. He said it's both record keeping and art. You know, photography is both, and actually, therefore, art heritage was a very important site in those days because he introduced ceramics, he introduced photography as fine art. He said these have to be considered on par with art. There's no differentiation and hierarchy in art. Art is art, you know. But of course, then you are different types of photographers. You're a, you know, documentary artist, or now, as you can see with Azadeh, you just create reality. You create reality or recreate reality. There are many versions of that. Here we have Anupam Sood, and now we come to Mr. Alkazi's interest in the Mahabharata, in Greeks, etc. And through these very big, like this is Gandhari in his production in 1962 at the Purana Killa against the ramparts of Purana, first at Firoz Shah Kotla, then at Purana Killa. This is just a student actor playing the role of Gandhari. And how to bring Gandhari into modern times and how to rub off all the Ravi Varma-esque kind of Draupadis and Sitas and all of them with the mukuts and the, you know, in all Ravi Varma, and then which went on to cinema and the depictions of women and the behavior of women. So how to rub that and erase that off and just have, you know, a woman, just simple. So this Gandhari, the queen, her hair is open, she's just wearing a black shawl, no jewelry. These were very modern ways of showing women on the stage at that time. This was never done. Everybody was with, you know, the Ramlila type of costume, etc. And it was not just the costume, but it was this pretty behavior and sweet behavior and cowboy behavior and all that, which was trying to be obliterated in theatre from the minds of all these actors who were coming from small villages and who had been inspired by Hindi cinema and the ways of depicting women and men. And this Nancy has juxtaposed against Anupam's Draupadi, which is very bold, with the five Pandavas over here. And Anupam calls this the modern day Draupadi in the bra and panties.
This side seems to have a lot more of women who are, as you said, the Godrej hair dye or the Anupam suit here, where she's doing up her face. So, where are we moving from a naked woman to a
Yeah, well, now we're coming into women trying to represent themselves. Those are not women representing themselves. Now she's getting dressed, here she's getting dressed. So now women are presenting something of themselves. I am this modern woman. She's saying, this is the modern Draupadi. This is the modern woman. So it is now women are learning to not talk about them. It's a very good question, by the way. From all that nakedness and all that elemental, basic stuff, you're coming to women as they are depicting themselves, now how they want to present themselves. So you see that over here. And over here, this Anupam work, of course, is wonderful because this is called Dressing for a Journey. So this is Anupam herself, autobiographical. She's putting on lipstick, dressing. She's got a suitcase, a little bag, and those are her family. That's her mother and her brothers and sisters. That's one of her friends, and that's her father who's ill. And so his journey is now to move out. He's at the edge of the canvas. His journey is towards now death. And she's preparing herself, preparing herself for life or whatever you want to say. So but Anupam depicts, so the cities are always, this city is in ruins. This city is already battered. There's not a soul over there. It's sort of empty city. And in this, that bleakness is echoed in the fact that this relationship between the man and the woman is, estranged. You have an estranged relationship. And of course, one only will marvel at her technique, which is just so amazing. So actually, women caught up in cities like this is a very mysterious work of this nude woman running. Utopia is in this direction. She's running in the other direction. There's a cycle rickshaw wala over here representing bleak streets. So she gives you also a lot to think about without naming it or specifying it. These are more easy to read.
I think this is one of her favorite works in the entire collection.
Yes, the entire. So now this is of course Azadeh's very, very powerful work. So Azadeh Akhlaghi is Iranian, and she has spent several years studying the history of her country, the political history of her country, and the assassinations that took place in her country over a period of 100 years. So this is one of 17 works, which is called By an Eyewitness. Now, she is the witness. So in every picture, Azadeh is there. So there she is in the red chadar, and as if she were there. And she stages through police records, through people who were there. She gathers information about what was kept hushed up, which was not recorded in the papers. They're all the deaths of mainly journalists, of artists, of people who speak out against the government. So this is because she comes from the world of cinema and was art director. These are all actors. This is all staged, and they're very powerful. So now she tells me, Azadeh tells me, that these have been this is fiction. I mean, her version of whatever she put together. But now these are looked on as if they're documents. These are documents of this is the assassination of so and so and so and so. Imagine it's just turned around like fake news becoming real or something. Quite frightening, actually, for what is real and what is not real. Kusama. Kusama was a Japanese avant-garde artist in New York. Mr. Alkazi set up an institution called SICA, Center for International Contemporary Art, in New York, and he felt that he wanted to show art, not just Indian art, but Indian art with all world art. He wanted Indian art to really, he felt it was very powerful, and he felt it stood in competition, but Western critics and art historians never wrote about Indian art. They always called it derivative and not really, something unique. So Alkazi felt that I'm going to start an institution right bang in the middle of New York and tell people that that's not a fact. So he had very many huge kind of advisory board who would select the work. So this ran for only a couple of years, unfortunately, because then the Gulf War started and then he closed it up. But his first exhibition was of Kusama, and Kusama had gone back to Japan. He had neglected by the American press, the American art world, and now Mr. Alkazi brought her back. He wanted it to be a woman artist. He wanted it to be somebody who was unknown and had been neglected, and he wanted to say, "This is an artist of the future." And there's no need for us to say anymore. I mean, Kusama and her infinity nets are just all over the universe now. And this was her comeback. And the person who wrote the catalogue for this, as he had selected so many women to write his catalogues here, so too in America he selected Alexander Monroe. And Alexander Monroe, who is now the head of Guggenheim, is now the head of the Asian department of Guggenheim in New York. Okay. So this is the second part of the exhibition, which Nancy has envisaged, whereas upstairs was really more about the woman and the outer world, her responses to herself and the outer world. Over here, it is totally the inner world of the woman, her contemplative side, her meditative side. This is more thinking within. So, I mean, this is a much more quiet, color-wise, the layout-wise, etc. And just as upstairs we had very bold things to come upon from time to time, over here they're more gentler, and you can also see foreground, background. So when I'm standing, I can see this picture in relationship to the one at the back. This is how one has designed it. So, and also one is constantly getting different perspectives of seeing the work, not only next to one another, but also against the colors.
You've got an aunt of yours behind you.
Yes, that is Mehra Alkazi, my father's sister. She's an Arab artist who he encouraged for her to, I've written about her, and actually there's going to be a show with some of her work in Bombay at the Barjeel Foundation is doing it in Bombay from Dubai, of Arab artists who are in India. So Mehra is one of them. And she was a wonderful graphic artist, but she also made paintings. And this is her series, which Mr. Alkazi brought out in limited edition. He produced this album of hers, and it's of landscapes in Ibiza. So she was a recluse. She didn't want all the name and fame she was getting, and she wanted to be alone and just with her art. And she went off and lived alone in a little home in Spain, and away from the rest of the family, and just created her artworks. So this was the series, and Mr. Alkazi has written beautifully about this series of his sister. He was very proud of her. She just passed away a couple of years ago, and we are now trying to piece together her collection. Our family is trying to do that, my cousins and myself, the Arab side of my family, because she gave away all her paintings to everybody. She said, you take it, you take it, you take it. So as a consequence, they're all over the place. Nobody knows where they are. So we're trying to put it together so that she can participate in major shows, because she was really regarded as one of the earliest women Arab modern painters, Munira. And so I've written a little piece about her, which will come out in that catalogue in Bombay, of this Arab artist thing. I've written about her, whatever I could find, her biographical details. And I knew her very well. I used to visit her all the time in Kuwait. She ended up in Kuwait, and I was going to Kuwait quite often, so I came to know her very well. And she was a wonderful person, wonderful person. They all had great senses of humor, all 9 Alkazi children, my father included. So we used to always have a great time together. Yeah. So, yeah. This is also Pilu's wonderful. I love these two. Didn't talk about Latika. This is glorious. This is her banyan tree, Latikas, and this is erosion. This is Pilu Pochkhanawala's erosion. So again, you know, it coming, and those are ant hills, and that's just smoke. I mean, Mr. Alkazi, who would buy photographs of smoke? So we have a whole series of all these things which Latika took, which Mr. Alkazi thought were very fascinating, and this is where she had her sources of inspiration. Dead twigs. I went to her house once and showed me all the fossils she had. Her whole room was covered with fossils. Veranda was covered with fossils. That's what inspired her, all these little things where insects made their homes, the decaying of it, the death. So death and decay were a big theme in Mr. Alkazi's theatre, and the mortality of life. The mortality of life. It could be glorious and full, but it could also be something else, you know, becoming ether.
Thank you, Amal. Thank you.
You're welcome.